General Hospital spoilers reveal that one of the most disturbing and obsessive currents sweeping through Port Charles has begun with Stella, whose world has been thrown into chaos by the relentless pressure Drew has imposed. The investigation into alleged insurance fraud, which Drew orchestrated with precision and cunning, has created an unbearable weight upon her, a suffocating tension that no one could have anticipated. For weeks, Stella has been walking a tightrope, balancing the needs of those around her, the well-being of Martin, and the creeping suspicion that her every action is being scrutinized, catalogued, and manipulated. The constant questioning, the pointed looks from agents, and the insinuations from Drew have become a daily torment, building an invisible storm around her that grows more violent with each passing hour. It was only a matter of time before the human body, bound by limits no one can ignore, began to falter, and the result was devastating. Stella collapsed, her stroke not just a physical manifestation of the pressure but a symbolic shattering of the protective walls she had built around herself. The hospital staff reacted with panic, the familiar corridors of GH echoing with alarms and hurried footsteps, but beneath the surface, a more personal and combustible fire was igniting. Curtis, observing Stella's condition, was consumed with a fury unlike anything he had felt before. It was a heat born not merely from concern but from righteous indignation at Drew's calculated cruelty, a fury sharpened by the knowledge that this was not a random act of misfortune but a direct consequence of Drew's manipulations and relentless control. Curtis's anger became an obsession, an all-consuming force that directed every thought and every movement, transforming his protective instincts into a singular mission. Drew must be held accountable for the suffering inflicted upon Stella. Each detail of Stella's collapse, her labored breathing, the pallor on her face, the rapid pulse of emergency interventions, etched itself into Curtis's consciousness, fueling a need for action that refused to be contained. It was not only Stella's physical health that hung in the balance but the fragile stability of everyone around her, a reminder that Drew's machinations did not occur in isolation. The hospital, a place of healing and solace, became a pressure cooker of tension, where every whispered conversation, every glance, and every footstep seemed fraught with peril. Curtis's obsession began to manifest in tangible ways. He scrutinized every piece of evidence, every conversation, every subtle shift in Drew's behavior, seeking a clue, a misstep, anything that could serve as leverage. The lines between professional duty and personal vendetta blurred, each fueling the other, creating a maelstrom of emotion that threatened to consume him entirely. Meanwhile, Stella, unconscious or semi-conscious in her hospital bed, became the epicenter of this storm, the living symbol of what happens when obsession, manipulation, and unchecked ambition collide. Her mind, though fragile and hazy, wrestled with fragments of fear and recognition, flashes of understanding about the dangers surrounding her, and yet she remained trapped, her body rebelling against the pressures imposed by others. The ripple effects of her condition spread outward, affecting not only Curtis and Drew but every family member, friend, and colleague connected to her, creating a network of tension and dread that seemed to grow exponentially with each passing hour. Drew, as manipulative and strategic as ever, remained dangerously composed, his own obsession with control and dominance allowing him to maintain an eerie calm even as the world around him seemed to teeter on the edge of disaster. Yet even Drew could not ignore the storm Curtis had become, the relentless pursuit of justice, or vengeance, that drove Curtis to the brink. The situation became a complex dance of power and desperation, each participant reacting to the obsessions and anxieties of the others, feeding off the tension, amplifying the chaos. Curtis's fury was not just a reaction, it was an agent of change, a force capable of reshaping alliances, exposing secrets, and forcing confrontations that might otherwise have remained hidden. In this environment, every action mattered, every decision carried consequences, and every misstep could tip the balance from calculated tension to outright catastrophe. The obsession Curtis felt was mirrored in the hospital staff's anxiety, in the hushed conversations behind closed doors, in the silent prayers of those who hoped for Stella's recovery and feared the consequences if she did not survive. It was clear to all involved that Drew's manipulations had triggered more than a health crisis. They had unleashed a chain reaction of psychological, emotional, and social turmoil that no one could easily contain. In the shadows of this chaos, the dynamics between Curtis and Drew became ever more volatile, each action and reaction a potential spark in an already flammable environment. Stella's stroke was more than a medical emergency, it was a symbol of the reckoning Drew might soon face, a stark illustration of the human cost of obsession and control. Curtis's obsession, fueled by rage and a fierce protective instinct, began to crystallize into strategy, a determined plan to hold Drew accountable, to ensure that every ounce of manipulation, every subtle act of cruelty, every pressure applied to Stella would be recognized and punished. Yet even as Curtis honed his focus, the hospital environment remained unpredictable, fraught with unforeseen consequences and escalating dangers. Every conversation Curtis overheard, every misdirection by Drew, every reaction of those caught in the crossfire intensified the stakes, creating an atmosphere of relentless tension and suspense. The obsessions of the individuals involved, particularly Curtis's, became a lens through which the unfolding drama could be understood, a reflection of how personal vendettas, protective instincts, and unrestrained ambition could converge to produce outcomes both catastrophic and transformative. As Stella's health remained precarious, the intensity of Curtis's obsession only grew, intertwining with the collective anxiety of everyone connected to her, making it clear that this was no ordinary crisis. The convergence of Drew's manipulations, Stella's vulnerability, and Curtis's relentless drive created a narrative of high stakes, emotional intensity, and unavoidable confrontation, a story in which obsessions themselves became characters, shaping the course of events and defining the moral and emotional landscape of Port Charles. The psychological weight of these intertwined obsessions permeated the halls of the hospital, influencing every decision, every interaction, and every possibility for redemption or retribution. And as the days passed, it became increasingly apparent that Curtis's obsession, while deeply personal, was inseparable from the broader narrative of control, power, and justice that had been set into motion, ensuring that the consequences of Drew's actions would reverberate far beyond a single patient's bed, creating a drama of unparalleled intensity that would test loyalties, challenge moral boundaries, and push every character involved to the brink of their endurance. Stella's condition teeters on the brink, her very survival hanging by a fragile thread, yet the chaos surrounding her does not end with her physical fragility. The insurance fraud scandal orchestrated by Drew has cast a shadow over the hospital, suffusing every corridor, every whispered conversation, and every hurried glance with tension and suspicion. Curtis finds himself cornered, trapped between the need to protect Stella and the limits of what he can actually do within the tangled web Drew has spun. His options are constrained, his choices narrowed by the magnitude of Drew's manipulations, yet the fire of his obsession only intensifies. Every heartbeat Stella struggles to maintain becomes a symbol of what Curtis cannot allow to fail, and each calculated move Drew makes forces Curtis to confront the stark reality that mere restraint may no longer suffice. It is an obsession in motion, a relentless mental force that drives him toward action, compelling him to consider avenues he might otherwise avoid, and each potential choice carries the weight of moral consequence, danger, and the unyielding pressure of urgency. The situation escalates further as Portia enters the fray, her own instincts for justice, protection, and intervention converging with Curtis's fury, forming a coalition of decisive intent that threatens to destabilize the carefully laid plans Drew believes he controls. Together, Curtis and Portia begin to act in concert, their efforts synchronized yet unpredictable, amplifying the chaos around Drew and turning the hospital into a pressure cooker of confrontation and revelation. The intensity of their combined focus ensures that no detail goes unnoticed, no oversight remains unpunished, and every misstep Drew has ever made becomes a potential lever in their hands. The stakes continue to rise, the obsession driving Curtis and the assertive intervention of Portia making it clear that the situation will not remain contained. Drew's manipulations, which once seemed insulated by cunning and intimidation, are now exposed to the relentless force of determination and moral outrage. The unfolding drama is no longer simply about Stella's health or a single act of fraud. It has grown into a maelstrom of obsession, action, and consequences, where every choice made by Curtis and Portia ripples outward, threatening to upend carefully constructed balances and ignite conflicts far beyond the immediate crisis. As the pressure builds, the atmosphere thickens with anticipation, danger, and moral tension, making it evident that the entangled fates of Drew, Stella, Curtis, and Portia are bound together in a volatile, high-stakes struggle where obsession and righteous action collide, forcing everyone involved to confront the extremities of loyalty, justice, and survival, and ensuring that the consequences of Drew's schemes will be far-reaching and impossible to ignore. The story spirals, the intensity multiplying with each passing hour, and the hospital itself becomes a stage for the unfolding collision of wills, obsessions, and actions, each escalating the stakes and making it increasingly clear that the outcome will alter the lives of all involved, reshaping alliances, power dynamics, and the very definition of justice in Port Charles. Curtis's fury, Portia's intervention, and the relentless weight of Drew's own manipulations converge into a singular, unstoppable momentum, demonstrating that obsession, desperation, and the drive to protect and punish can reshape reality itself, pushing everyone involved toward a reckoning from which none will emerge unchanged. Stella's fragility, Drew's scheming, Curtis's obsession, and Portia's resolve form a volatile quartet, a perfect storm in which the boundaries between duty, vengeance, and survival blur, ensuring that the consequences of every action are immediate, intense, and irreversible. And so the story of Drew's insurance fraud becomes more than a scandal. It becomes the catalyst for obsession, the trigger for action, and the spark for a series of adjustments, confrontations, and moral reckonings that will push Curtis, Portia, and the entire hospital community into uncharted and dangerous territory, a vivid illustration of how pressure, obsession, and righteous indignation can collide to create chaos, drama, and the imperative for decisive action that can no longer be delayed. Stella's fragile form lies in a hospital bed, her pulse erratic, her breaths shallow, the lines of worry etched deep into her face as if the very weight of the world has settled upon her shoulders. Each second that passes feels like an eternity, every beep of the monitors a cruel reminder that life is precarious and that her fate teeters dangerously on the edge. The chaos surrounding her is nearly as suffocating as her injuries, as the ripple effects of Drew's darkness. His manipulations, his obsessions, and his relentless drive to control everything around him, spread outward, leaving a trail of tension, fear, and anticipation in their wake. Kai, ever observant and painfully aware of the sinister depths Drew has reached, watches from the sidelines, his mind torn between loyalty, fear, and an emerging, almost uncontrollable compulsion to strike. He sees the pattern forming, the trajectory of Drew's escalating cruelty, and the ways in which each calculated move, each shadowed decision, threatens to dismantle everything in its path. The realization that Drew's darkness is no longer contained, no longer restrained by ethics, law, or conscience, ignites within Kai a storm of internal conflict, a mixture of horror, fascination, and a growing obsession with both survival and retribution. The tension inside him coils tighter with each passing hour, every whispered conversation and subtle glance loaded with the knowledge that Drew is not only dangerous but fundamentally unpredictable, capable of turning his obsession, his fury, and his manipulations against anyone who stands in his way. Curtis, meanwhile, is feeling the full force of his own escalating emotions. His anger is a living thing, coiling like a snake within him, seeking a way to strike, to assert justice or vengeance, or perhaps some mix of both. Stella's near death has pushed him to the brink, and the knowledge that Drew's actions, his unyielding pressure and manipulation, have contributed to this crisis only intensifies his fury. Curtis is confronted not only with the moral imperative to act but also with the personal cost of doing nothing. Every delayed decision, every hesitation, could mean Stella's life, or death. And he cannot tolerate the idea that Drew might escape accountability for the suffering he has orchestrated. The intertwining of Stella's physical vulnerability and Drew's psychological manipulation creates a crucible in which Curtis feels compelled to act, yet must navigate a labyrinth of risk, strategy, and unpredictable outcomes. His mind races through potential plans, through threats, counter-threats, alliances, and betrayals, as the magnitude of Drew's reach becomes increasingly apparent. Curtis knows that Drew's darkness is systemic, infecting the lives of anyone in proximity, twisting loyalties, obscuring truths, and sowing chaos wherever he goes. Curtis's own moral compass, once steady, now oscillates under the pressure of necessity, vengeance, and fear, creating a potent mix of obsession and strategic calculation. Portia stands nearby, her resolve as sharp as Curtis's anger, her mind focused on the urgent need to protect Stella while navigating the treacherous dynamics Drew has unleashed. She sees the stakes with crystal clarity. Drew's actions have created an intricate web of deception and manipulation, and to untangle it requires not only courage but also cunning and foresight. Portia is aware that her choices are not isolated, they ripple outward, affecting Lucas, Kai, Curtis, and the countless others entangled in Drew's schemes. Each decision carries consequences that extend beyond the hospital walls, threatening careers, relationships, and even lives. She must weigh the immediate threat to Stella against the broader implications of confronting Drew's darkness head-on, and every option seems fraught with danger. The pressure mounts, a relentless tide that threatens to overwhelm even the most resilient minds, as the moral and emotional stakes intertwine with the physical danger facing Stella, creating a drama of unparalleled intensity. Kai's obsession with Drew's downfall grows with every moment, a compulsion that teeters between justice and vengeance. He studies Drew's patterns, the meticulous ways he orchestrates control, and the subtle psychological manipulations that leave others scrambling to maintain balance. The thought of Drew's unchecked power terrifies him, yet there is also a magnetic pull, a fascination with understanding and ultimately dismantling this darkness. The betrayal Kai contemplates, whether a preemptive strike, exposure, or manipulation, becomes a reflection of his own internal struggle, a mirror of the chaos Drew has sown in the lives around him. This internal conflict is compounded by the awareness that any misstep could endanger not only Kai himself but also Stella, Curtis, Portia, and the fragile network of alliances that remains intact only through careful calculation and sheer luck. Each whispered conversation, each fleeting observation, and each hidden message becomes a puzzle piece, and the pressure to act decisively grows unbearable as Drew's shadow looms ever larger over every decision, every heartbeat. Meanwhile, the hospital becomes a stage where life, death, loyalty, and betrayal converge. Stella's weakened state serves as both a literal and symbolic focal point for the tension that has enveloped everyone, her vulnerability a direct consequence of Drew's escalating cruelty, and her survival dependent on the interplay of multiple, high-stakes interventions. Curtis's moral rage, Portia's strategic clarity, and Kai's obsessive calculations all intersect, creating a combustible mixture that threatens to ignite at any moment. The stakes are both intensely personal and dangerously universal. The consequences of Drew's darkness reverberate through the corridors of the hospital and the lives of all who enter it. Every decision, every action, every silent calculation has the potential to tip the balance toward catastrophe or salvation, and the emotional weight of these choices presses heavily on everyone involved. The urgency of Stella's condition amplifies every thought, every plan, and every hesitation, transforming the hospital into a crucible where obsessions, betrayals, and moral imperatives are tested under fire. In this maelstrom of tension, obsession, and moral reckoning, every character is forced to confront the implications of Drew's darkness, the fragility of life, and the consequences of their own choices. The narrative stretches taut, each moment pregnant with potential disaster or triumph, and the characters are compelled to navigate a labyrinth of psychological, emotional, and physical threats. Stella's survival, Kai's obsession, Curtis's rage, and Portia's determination are inextricably linked, forming a complex tapestry of interwoven stakes that elevate the drama to near unbearable heights. Drew's darkness, once contained, has become a force that propels everyone into uncharted territory, demanding action, confrontation, and ultimately, resolution, though the path to it is littered with danger, deception, and the ever-present specter of mortality. As the storm of emotions, moral imperatives, and life-or-death stakes intensifies, it becomes clear that nothing, no secret, no hidden agenda, no loyalty, can remain untouched. Each character's choices will ripple outward, forever altering relationships, power dynamics, and the fragile balance of life and death within the walls of the hospital. And at the heart of it all lies Stella, fragile yet central, her very existence a catalyst for a drama of obsession, betrayal, and reckoning that is only beginning to reach its full, explosive intensity.